The first time my wife met Karen, it took less than 60 seconds for things to go sideways. We'd only lived in the neighborhood for 4 days. Still had moving boxes in the living room. Still figuring out the trash schedule. Still trying to figure out if the HOA here actually enforced anything or if they were just all bark like most places. Turns out they were worse. Way worse. That morning, my wife had pulled into the driveway with her SUV packed full of donation boxes, clothes, canned food, school supplies. She was headed to a community center across town. She was organizing a relief drive for displaced families from the floods. She does that kind of thing. It's just who she is. I was helping her unload when this woman, blonde bob haircut, sunglasses like she's undercover, clipboard in hand, comes speed walking up our driveway like she owns the concrete. No introduction, no hello. Just, you're not allowed to park in the driveway for more than 15 minutes unless you're unloading groceries. I looked at my wife, then back at her. We are unloading. Karen snapped. Those aren't groceries. That's when my wife calmly said, "Ma'am, I'd appreciate if you didn't raise your voice. I'm not breaking any rule." Karen stepped closer and said, "I could have you arrested for obstruction if you don't comply. HOA bylaws are enforceable by local code." And here's the part I'll never forget. My wife didn't flinch. She reached into her purse, pulled out her wallet, flipped it open, and showed Karen her badge. "Then please go ahead and try. Because I'm the one who signs every enforcement badge in this county." Dead silence. Karen's mouth opened. Nothing came out. The clipboard started to tremble. I stood there, biting my lip to keep from laughing. Karen took a step back, then another, and turned without a word. We thought that'd be the end of it. Just another nosy neighbor who learned a quick lesson. But no, Karen was just getting started. Over the next few days, weird letters showed up taped to our mailbox. Anonymous complaints due mini porch lights, trash cans too visible, Christmas lights out of season. In March, HOA notices started stacking up like parking tickets. Then came the fake rulebook. I kid you not. She printed a set of emergency amendments to the HOA bylaws and slid them under our door like some low-rent spy operation. Most of them were clearly targeting us. No charitable activity on driveways. No boxes visible from the street. All vehicles must fit inside garages at all times. My wife didn't say anything. She just started building a folder. Witness statements, photo logs, audio recordings. She reached out to a few neighbors she'd met, folks who'd had similar run-ins with Karen but were too afraid to speak up. Then one afternoon, Sheriff Randall called. Said he'd heard through the grapevine that my wife had been quietly investigating an HOA harassment case. He asked her if she'd be willing to brief a few deputies on overreach cases. That's when I knew something big was coming. The next week, we got a knock at the door. It was Lucas, the HOA security guy. Young, nervous, clearly uncomfortable. He told us he couldn't stay long, but wanted to warn us. Karen had been using the community surveillance cameras, ones funded by HOA, to spy on residents. Not just violations, actual footage of people in their yards, porches, windows. He'd seen her watching hours of it. And worse, editing clips to frame people for fines. That was the final straw. My wife filed a formal complaint with the state. She submitted everything. And at the next HOA meeting, she walked in with a manila folder, sat quietly in the front row, and waited. Karen strutted in late, as always, with her smug little entourage, Greg the treasurer and Sandra the secretary. She launched into some nonsense about a new neighborhood initiative for community decorum. Midway through her speech, my wife stood up and said, "Before we talk about decorum, I have a few documents to enter into the record." Karen scoffed. "You're not on the agenda." My wife held up her badge again. "I make my own agenda." Then she handed the packet to Sandra. What followed was the longest silence I've ever heard in that clubhouse. Pages turning. Gasps. Greg turned pale. Sandra muttered, "Oh my God." Video stills. Transcript excerpts. A signed confession from Lucas. Karen's face twisted. She started rambling about fake news, vendettas, privacy rights. But the room had already shifted. People pulled out their phones. Some started recording. Others demanded she step down. It took another week, but the state filed a full audit. Turns out Karen had been fining residents unlawfully for years. She'd even skimmed off HOA dues to install unapproved surveillance equipment. Cameras in backyards. Hidden mics. A special vote was held. Karen was ousted. Her access revoked. The board dissolved temporarily, and my wife was offered interim presidency. She declined. Instead, she nominated Marta, a retired principal known for her fairness. Marta won unanimously. Karen didn't go quietly. She sent an email to the entire neighborhood claiming she was the victim of political targeting and promised to fight back. But the sheriff's office confirmed she was under investigation for multiple violations, including misuse of community funds and illegal surveillance. And maybe the wildest part? When they audited the camera feeds, they found Karen had even installed one facing her own neighbor's bedroom window. The footage? Deleted. But the existence? Logged. Today, the HOA has term limits, transparency rules, and regular open forums. The surveillance system? Completely removed. As for Karen, well, I hear she moved to a different town. Started over. But her name's been flagged on state HOA leadership registries for 10 years. So yeah, don't threaten to arrest my wife on a driveway. Because the woman who signs every officer's badge probably knows how to hand you yours. Let me know what you think. Was Karen just drunk on power, or was there something deeper going on with her need to control everything? Have you ever lived somewhere where the HOA took things way too far? I want to hear your stories. Drop them in the comments below. And if you're dealing with a petty HOA dictator yourself, maybe just marry a commissioner. I still remember the first time my wife, Camilla, told me she was headed to the community garden on Sunday morning, just a quick trip to check on the rosemary and kale beds before brunch. I didn't think much of it at the time. She wore her favorite sun hat, the big floppy one with the blue ribbon, and hummed a little gospel tune as she left the house. What I didn't know then, what no one could have guessed, was that she'd come back shaken, confused, and with a citation in her hand. A citation for trespassing on land she had permission to work on, land that belonged to us. It didn't take long to find out who was behind it. Nadine Winters. If you've never met someone like Nadine, count yourself lucky. She's the HOA vice president in our little Missouri suburb, but acts like she's queen of the free world. Always in a pantsuit 2 shades too loud, clipboard in hand, and a permanent squint like she's trying to read your soul and judge it. Apparently, she spotted Camilla inside the garden area, decided something looked off, and called the neighborhood security hotline, then the police. Camilla wasn't arrested, thank God, but the cops did show up. 3 of them. One had his hand on his holster the whole time. My wife, a retired school principal, a woman who's hosted PTA fundraisers in this very neighborhood, was treated like a suspect because she didn't look the way Nadine expected a resident to look. I got the call as I was heading into work. I am the deputy commissioner for state law enforcement, and I've seen all kinds of foolishness in my line of work. But nothing hits like when it's your own family. I took a day off, filed a complaint with the HOA, demanded a formal apology, and waited. A week passed. Then a month. Nothing. Instead, Nadine doubled down. Sent us more notices. Said Camilla was under review for violating decorum guidelines. That's when I realized we weren't dealing with ignorance. This was targeted. It was harassment. And I wasn't about to let it go. So I did what I do best. I started digging. Turns out, Nadine had a long history of abusing her position. From fining single moms for having inflatable kiddie pools to threatening elderly couples over flower beds, she ran the HOA like a private regime. But the straw that broke it all came 3 weeks later, when she showed up at our doorstep, finger wagging, yelling that Camilla had desecrated community space by planting unauthorized mint. Then, as I stood in the doorway, she smirked and said, "Maybe next time, I'll have her arrested for real." She didn't know who I was. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked her in the eye and said, "You've made a mistake that's going to follow you all the way to Jefferson City." That night, I made some calls. Not threats, just conversations. See, my wife might be graceful and patient, but me? I know the law. I know the channels. And I know how to set a spotlight on small-town tyrants who think their HOA badge gives them power over people's dignity. Within a week, I filed an official complaint to the State Housing Oversight Committee, called in 3 civil rights attorneys I trust, and notified the Attorney General's office. Then I attended the next HOA meeting. They didn't see it coming. I walked in with a folder of documentation, video clips, affidavits, and a stack of official letters. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. I read aloud the list of abuses. Nadine tried to interrupt, tried to say I was intimidating her. That's when my wife, Camilla, stood up and said, voice steady. No, ma'am. This is what accountability looks like. By the end of that meeting, 3 other board members had resigned. The HOA president asked for Nadine's immediate suspension pending investigation. In the room, it erupted. Some folks clapped. Others cried. Even those who once supported Nadine sat in silence, realizing how far they'd let her go unchecked. But it didn't stop there. In the following weeks, a full review of HOA practices began, led by a special task force I helped advise. Nadine's home was searched with a court order. Turns out she had been falsifying notices, billing personal expenses to HOA funds, and even colluding with a private developer to pressure homeowners into selling so she could revitalize the neighborhood into some kind of overpriced gated utopia. Her arrest made the local news. The footage of her being escorted into a patrol car, still arguing, still waving a folder, felt surreal. Camilla watched the report quietly, then turned to me and said, "You know, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Today, the garden's blooming again. The mint, the rosemary, the kale. Camilla's added sunflowers this time, too. We have a new HOA board now. More balanced, more diverse. And guess what? I don't plan to run for anything. I just want peace. But if peace ever gets threatened again, I'll be ready. Not with anger, with truth, and with law. So let me ask you this: what would you have done if it were your spouse being targeted? Do we allow petty power trips to ruin good communities? Or do we take a stand, even if it means ruffling feathers? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me, does order become oppression? And who holds the self-appointed enforcers accountable when they finally cross the line?